welcome to Illini Drive here on WPGU 1071. Orri Benatar returning with all of you as we have Gerard, Jade, Hilton, Tommy, Polcyn, and Jake Hasan. Hello again. If you couldn't hear me on the last mic, seems we have some mic issues. Our producer, Gerard, is going to make sure that's fixed up. Hello to everyone on Urbana Public Television watching on this Wednesday evening. We are here on Monday, September the 25th, and that's a special day for one of our studio members, Tommy Polcyn's birthday. Happy birthday, Tommy.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. It's my day, but
21, right?
Good. Yeah, 21 years old.
Yeah, it's a fun birthday.
Real old.
Yeah, I know. 21 is kind of the first birthday in college where you're like, wow, I'm getting really old. 20, it's like, eh. But 21, you're like, whoa. No.
Yeah, no.
You're getting there.
Definitely a different feeling. I mean, most of them, like, recently. I mean, 19, I guess, here. But, yeah, 21, definitely different.
Well, happy birthday to you, Thomas.
Nice.
And we are now going to talk not about Tommy's birthday and what a great guy he is, but we're going to talk about Illinois football because the Illini are back after the bye week. They're going to be taking on Nebraska here on Friday night. It's a big weekend for Illini sports in general. Illini football hosting Nebraska Friday night. And then on Saturday is going to be the first ever induction for the first Illinois Hall of Fame class. Lots of big names are going to be here. It'll be on Saturday afternoon. They're also probably going to have a presentation on the field before the game or during or like at halftime. But the first thing to talk about for this game, the spread is 7 points. Does this seem reasonable, Jake? I mean, Nebraska struggled last week against Rutgers. We thought they might have lost that game, but 7 points. I'm pretty surprised Illinois is not as much of an underdog in this game because initially we thought Nebraska winnable, but if they lose, it would be pretty big.
I mean, it seems reasonable to me because of the way that Nebraska has struggled and then the way that Illinois came out flat against University of South Florida. So, I mean, it kind of evens out, I think, with both teams' struggles and then also taking into account Illinois' wins in the first 2 weeks. So it seems reasonable to me. It doesn't seem super outlandish to the point where it makes you scratch your head.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've said the whole time I think we'll beat Nebraska, but at the same time, too, like you were saying, they're still a solid team. We haven't been playing our best football, especially coming off a game like we just had at USF. I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting. I think they can do it, though. I think that 7 points is fair. I think we'll at least cover that.
Now, obviously, the first thing people look at is the quarterback issues, or, well, not really issues, just whether or not we'll see multiple quarterbacks again in this game. Lovey saying today how Jeff George Jr. is kind of their relief pitcher almost. But let's say Chase Crouch does have a rocky first quarter, first half against Nebraska. Is George Jr. the first guy you come in? Because let's say it's a close game. We've never seen Jeff George Jr. play in a situation where it's a really close game. Because last year he started games against really good Big Ten opposition, starting against Michigan, which was his first career start at the Big House, and then also playing against Wisconsin. So, Tommy, if you're in a situation, 7-point game, first half, Chase Crouch might not be playing too well, do you go with George Jr. or maybe do you experiment a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think that George Jr. is necessarily the best option just because really in the time that he has been in, he hasn't done that well. And I mean, you can blame that on a lot of things. You can blame it on the line. You can blame it on him not being comfortable with his receivers. But I just don't think he's been great in the time he's been out there. So I think Chase gets at least the first half. If he's looking really bad, then maybe you go to a guy like Cam Thomas. I mean, I think that'd be great to see. Young guy, a lot of talent. So that's definitely a possibility. I think it's Chase's game, though.
Yeah, personally, I think even if Crouch is not playing too well in the first half, Jake, I would stick with him the whole game because he's the only one of the Illinois quarterbacks that have close big game experience, at least, because the couple close big games he's played in, the Ball State one comes to mind. Western Kentucky was a pretty close game most of the time, but last year the Purdue and Rutgers game. So for me, I'm sticking with Crouch.
I mean, I think it's like Tommy said, you have to at least give him the first half, but I think it has to be really, really bad to have George Jr. or Cam Thomas come in because, I mean, at the end of the day, Crouch gives you your best chance to win.
You're listening to Illini Drive here on WPGU 1071, brought to you by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and info on the Illini, visit fightingillini.com or call 1-866-Illini-1. Once again, fightingillini.com or call 1-866-Illini-1 for more ticket information. The last thing to kind of mention about the Illini-Nebraska game before we move on to Big Ten football, what kind of an atmosphere is it going to be? Because this is going to be a pumping game with the Hall of Fame class coming in. Big first conference game. It's going to be on a Friday night. This could be one of the better atmospheres we've seen for Illini football. I think this might be the best Memorial Stadium atmosphere we'll have all season.
Yeah, no, this is really fun right here. But yeah, I would agree. I definitely think this is gonna be a really good, big game in terms of turnout. I know the IFC brought in Louis the Child, the EDM group, to perform in Grange Grove for free right before it. So I think a lot of people will come out for that, and then hopefully we'll be able to get them to stay and not head over to Line or something right after. So, I mean, this is also a big game. I mean, the last time they were here, we had a huge last-second win. I mean, with 10 seconds left, Geronimo Allison. I mean, you can't really beat that. And kind of the memories of that get me a little bit more excited for this game too.
And guess what? I mean, it's still the beginning of the season, but it seems like there's so many more home games left. There really kind of isn't. Because after this Nebraska Friday night game, Rutgers, which will be middle of October, then you've got the big sort of let's bring all of the alumni back and let's bring parents with the homecoming game against Wisconsin, which could be a pretty big loss. Dad's Day against Indiana. And then the Northwestern game, we're all going to be gone for Thanksgiving, so it's not going to be much of a student presence. So honestly, Jake, would you say this Nebraska game is the biggest home game this season?
I think it is in terms of outlook for the rest of the season, because I think this is where the Illini sink or swim, because they had the bad loss to USF. So then this is where you show fans and everyone watching like what you're made of. And if they lose to Nebraska, then I mean, I think that is a kind of I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but I think that's kind of an outlook for the rest of the season, because I think if then the wins, not the wins, the losses start to pile up, and that's just a trend at that point.
And I mean, if the Illini do win, they'll be 3-1. If they lose, they'll be 2-2. So I think either way, no matter the result of this game, if it's close and they do lose, I don't think it's a reason to panic. 2-2 going into Iowa. If it's 3-1, I think Illinois is in a very, very good position to potentially even make a bowl game. As we move on now towards more Big Ten football, since the Illini didn't play this past week, we got some interesting Big Ten games, some interesting Big Ten results, the most notable one being the Penn State win over Iowa at Kinnick Stadium on that last-second touchdown throw by Trace McSorley. I could not believe it when that happened. That was a huge win for the Nittany Lions, pretty much saved their season. Michigan got a big win against Purdue. Ohio State just rolled over UNLV, but they went down in the rankings. Maryland lost to Central Florida. Nebraska edged out Rutgers. 10 points is edging against Rutgers. I mean, let's be fair there. Indiana crushed Georgia Southern, and then Tommy's boys, the Fighting Irish, got a big win against Michigan State. But that Penn State win, Jake, how big is that for them going through for the rest of the season? Because if they would have lost that game, it would have been Michigan and Wisconsin's conference to lose.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what happened to Ohio State when they took one loss to another top 25 team in Oklahoma. So you can only imagine what would have happened if Penn State lost to unranked Iowa. I mean, Penn State probably would have fallen farther than Ohio State has, and Ohio State's at what, 10 now?
11.
So, I mean, yeah, they're outside the top 10, and they used to be 2. So, I mean, that's a pretty big fall for Penn State. It would have been devastating.
And looking at Big Ten games for the rest of this week, Tommy, there's some big ones happening within the divisions. You got Illinois, Nebraska on the Friday night. Then Saturday, Wisconsin, Northwestern, honestly, might be the biggest Big Ten game of the week, because Penn State's hosting Indiana. Ohio State's playing at Rutgers. Michigan State, Iowa. Iowa should be winning that one pretty handily. Maryland, Minnesota should be a Minnesota win. But that Wisconsin, Northwestern game, if the Wildcats beat the Badgers, then that last Northwestern game for Illinois might be a little bit more challenging, even though it is at Memorial Stadium. So, Tommy, if you're an Illini fan, do you want Wisconsin to keep it going, or do you want Northwestern to grab that upset?
I don't know. You can kind of go either way with this because, I mean, one, you kind of always want to see your top 10 Big Ten guys kind of representing well, have Wisconsin up there saying, okay, still a really good conference, you know. But at the same time, say that we're like, what, 4-6? Is it 11? Yeah, 4-6 heading into Northwestern.
Yeah.
So, I mean, say we're 4-6, we get that quality win against Northwestern, who possibly beat a Wisconsin at that point. That could push us as one of those final guys to possibly make a bowl game, do one of those things. So, I mean, it could be good, but I think I'd still say Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin, honestly, it's Penn State's conference to lose. despite the fact that the Badgers are ranked 10th and did move down a spot, I think Wisconsin has a really good chance to win the Big Ten. They look like a good football team. They had a bye week last week, get some rest. Big home game against Northwestern this upcoming week. Michigan, on the other hand, next best team to Penn State based on the rankings. They're 8th in the country at 4-0. But Michigan had a tough time against Purdue. This Purdue football team is solid. It was at West Lafayette. Michigan, I honestly don't think they're the second best team in the Big Ten. I think it's Wisconsin. I'd say Penn State, then Wisconsin. And even between Michigan and Ohio State, I still think Ohio State is better because Ohio State has a quality loss against Oklahoma. They're running all over every other team they're playing, whereas Michigan, they had tough times against Air Force and Purdue.
I feel like that's kind of been a trend of the Jim Harbaugh Wolverines, though, that they kind of start the season a little more slowly. It takes them a couple weeks to get into their kind of groove. I mean, I know we're in week 5 now, and that's more than a couple weeks, but I feel like, excuse me, I feel like their team always finishes stronger than they start.
Yeah, you've got that right. I mean, if you look at the rest of Michigan's schedule, it's going to be tough, though. It might be tough for Michigan to end the season off strong. They're playing Michigan State next, at Indiana, then at Penn State. So 2 very winnable games, but Michigan State is always a toss-up. I don't care how bad Michigan State is. That Michigan State-Michigan game can go either way. At Indiana, probably should be a Michigan win, but Indiana did beat them last year. Then against Penn State, Rutgers, Minnesota, Maryland, was at Wisconsin, and then hosting Ohio State. So they have to end the season potentially playing the other 2 teams they're going to fight for the Big Ten title with in Wisconsin and Ohio State. So honestly, this might be a different year for Jim Harbaugh's side because those Wisconsin-Ohio State games, they're going to be the season definers. If Michigan can come away with a win against Penn State, then they're going to be even bigger. But even if they lose to Penn State, I think those 2 games are going to be massive for the Wolverines. It might be a tough time for them. They might have to end the season. Well, not they might have to end the season. Choose my words more carefully. They might have a tough time ending the season on a hot streak playing against 2 tough sides.
I also think that that'll be key for Jim Harbaugh, like as you look at his career at Michigan so far, because he's in year 3 now, and you know everyone says year 4 is usually when you want to be successful. I mean, through the last 2 years and this year, Michigan's just kind of been running in place. I mean, really, they haven't really moved up or down. They've been in the top 10 near the playoff, but they haven't really pushed forward, I mean, as much as you would like to see in week 3. So I think this season, especially like you said, those last 2 games as a whole are really important for that program.
That's an interesting point you bring up, Jake, the way Michigan's kind of running in place, whereas teams like Penn State have really progressed after all the scandals with Joe Paterno and Jerry Sandusky. They've progressed massively. Minnesota's progressed a lot. I guess that's an interesting topic to discuss now. What's the most improved team in the Big Ten? Honestly, I mean, you look at the East, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State are pretty much the same that they have been, but honestly, a lot of improvement in the West. I want to hear what Tommy has to say about this.
Yeah, no, I was actually like right when you said that, it made me think of Maryland, Purdue. Those teams both look good. Like Purdue obviously took a tough loss against Michigan, but I mean obviously that's a top 10 team. Purdue looked solid though. I thought for a while they were going to win that game, and then Maryland, they beat Texas. They have been putting up they put up more than 50 points in multiple games. Like they look like a solid team. And honestly, looking at the last, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, Michigan could lose all 4 of their last 4 games. I think it's possible.
You mentioned Purdue. The Boilermakers are technically in last place in the Big Ten West, but listen to their schedule and how they've played. 7-point loss to Lamar Jackson in Louisville. Then they beat Ohio 44-21, crushed Mizzou 35-3, and then they only lost to Michigan 28-10. Minnesota, then Wisconsin next. Don't play the Illini until November the 4th. The rest of their schedule is pretty simple. Purdue doesn't have to play Penn State. They don't have to play Ohio State. Their next toughest games are these next 2 weeks against Minnesota and Wisconsin. Then Purdue have a really good chance to get a lot of wins at Rutgers, hosting Nebraska, hosting the Illini, at Northwestern, at Iowa versus Indiana. We could see Purdue make a bowl game. It's very, very possible. They're already at 2 wins now. This Minnesota-Wisconsin could be their last couple of big losses, but honestly, Purdue could run the table at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely a team to watch out for, especially when they face the Illini. I think it'd be a mistake for the Illini to overlook them. I mean, obviously, at this point, you shouldn't be looking that far ahead as it is, but I mean, when we talked about the schedule a couple weeks ago, I mean, I think we were pretty consensus that the Illini would beat Purdue, I think, right? So, I mean, and now we're flipping it, and now we're kind of doubting that prediction. And so, there's always that one team that is like the scrappy team that even though their record doesn't show it, they're better than they appear.
And another way to kind of see how they're appearing a lot better is the points for, points against stat. It's always the next thing you see next to overall record. Purdue has the fourth most amount of points in the Big Ten West behind Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Iowa. Purdue have scored 117 points in their 4 games. The Illini have scored 67 in their first 3. The Illini are 4th place in the division, yet they are last in the division in points for. But the Illini have only given up 75 points, which is around the middle of the pack in the Big Ten West. The team that's given up the least amount of points is Minnesota. Played the same amount of games as the Illini. Minnesota's only given up 24 points this season. Nebraska is first in the West, 122 points scored, 116 given up. So just amazing to see how all of these records are kind of, panning out. The only other team that I think that could compete with Wisconsin for the Big West title, I think Purdue has a chance to make a bowl game. The Illini, I think, have a chance also to make a bowl game. But Minnesota is the only other team in the Big Ten West I think could beat Wisconsin for the division title. Non-conference, they beat Buffalo, Oregon State, Middle Tennessee. They play Maryland, then Purdue, Michigan State, Illinois. Their toughest games are Michigan and Wisconsin. Minnesota might only lose 2 or 3 games this season. They could make it to a big bowl game. I'm not even putting a BCS bowl past them, honestly.
I think that within the next 4 years or so with PJ Fleck, that's very doable. I don't think they're there yet. They obviously have some talent. They're doing well so far. But really, none of these wins really stand out to me too much yet. Looking back at Purdue's schedule, I honestly think they could win 9 games. It's very possible. And sure, they're probably not the most talented team in the Big Ten, but they're very solid. Minnesota, again, you said they'll probably beat Maryland. I don't know if they will. Purdue's another challenge. Michigan State's not bad. They put up a decent game against Notre Dame. Obviously, big win for the Irish, but they very well could do it. Minnesota could probably win 6 to 7 games this year. They'll probably make a bowl game. I'd agree with that. I don't see a BCS game though.
I don't know. It's fun speaking hypothetically. PJ Fleck is one of the most likable coaches in college football, so you kind of want to see him succeed. We're going to take our first break here on Illini Drive. When we come back, we'll hear a quick Illini weekend recap, and then we are going to have a more serious discussion about the recent, the big news happening with the NFL and President Trump and his tweets and all of that. So we'll talk about that and more on Illini Drive right here on WPGU 107.1.
You're watching Illini Drive on Urbana Public Television. Tune in Monday nights at 6 p.m. to listen live on WPGU 107.1.
And welcome back to Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1. Orri Benatar returning with Will Gerard, Jade, Hilton, Tommy Polcyn, the birthday boy, and Jake Hasan. Before we continue on with our radio talk, let's hear from our new Daily Illini reporter, Matthew Goldstein, as he gives us a recap of the Illini results over the past weekend.
Good evening. I am Matthew Goldstein. Time for the Illini Weekend Recap. Illini soccer continues its losing streak with home defeats to Maryland and Rutgers. Junior Katie Murray scored Illinois' first goal in 3 games with her equalizer against 12th-ranked Rutgers on Sunday. They lost 2-1 in overtime to the Scarlet Knights after a 1-0 loss to Maryland on Friday. Volleyball starts Big Ten play with straight-set victories over Indiana and Northwestern. Outside hitters Jacqueline Quaid and Beth Prince led the Illini's offense with 26 kills combined against the Hoosiers and 20 in Evanston. Volleyball sits at 11-2 on a 5-game winning streak. Men's cross country had a top 2 finish in Boston on Friday in the 8K run. Junior Jesse Reiser finished first with a time of 24 minutes and 12 seconds. His running mate, John Davis, finished second. The Illini ended Friday with a second overall finish behind Syracuse. The women came in 18th. Finally, in preseason baseball, Indiana State defeated Illinois 18-10 at Illinois Field. The Illini allowed 16 hits and had 4 errors in their first preseason defeat on Saturday. This is your Illini Weekend Recap. I am Matthew Goldstein, Daily Illini Sports.
Thank you, Matthew. Nice first recap there. You'll be hearing more from Matthew throughout the entire year. He'll give us some recaps and also some fun features. We're going to shift our discussion now to a little bit more of a serious topic. It's been all over the sports news. we're usually the ones that like to tweet about sports, but the king of Twitter, the guy who's the most famous person on the planet, the most powerful person on the planet, decided he wanted to be like us for 48 hours and just tweet about sports all the time. And that's what he did. So President Donald Trump. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if he's the king of Twitter. Pirates pitcher Trevor Williams is a pretty solid Twitter account.
So Trevor Williams for president, basically, is what you're saying?
President of Twitter.
President of
It's
Twitter.
pretty solid.
Well, more so the fact his tweets get the most attention out of anyone else on Twitter. He might not have the most followers, but President Donald Trump decided to take to Twitter for the past 48 hours and tweet about the NFL and how its players are being unpatriotic by kneeling during the anthem and how they should be fired if they do it. And the NFL responded with, if players stood for the national anthem, they locked in arms to show unity. Around 118 or so players, I think they said, were kneeling during the anthem. The first game of the day, the London game between the Jags and the Ravens, we saw the Baltimore defense kneeling. The Jaguars defense was kneeling, but both sides were in unity. The Pittsburgh Steelers side, most of the team did not come out of the locker room for the national anthem. The only person who did was Alejandro Villanueva. Who else did?
They were all behind him in the tunnel.
They're all behind him in the
There
tunnel.
was a picture of it.
Okay, they're all behind him in the tunnel. Interesting.
They're also trying to say that that was an accident. That wasn't like supposed to be the thing. And there's no way that's true. Because like he's a 3-time Army Ranger. Like obviously.
He meant to do it. And he had a statement that came out a couple of minutes ago.
They were saying he was surprised though. They were saying like he was surprised by the fact that he was the only one out there and that he didn't even like realize that it was the thing. I don't know. I could be wrong. That's what Roethlisberger was saying.
Well, I saw Villanueva made a statement, and it's something very interesting how he basically said it. He basically explained how it's not like it's unpatriotic to not stand during the national anthem. It doesn't mean you're disrespecting the Army. It doesn't mean you're disrespecting the flag or the United States in general. It just means you're showing that you believe that there are injustices in the United States, which every country has injustices. But I mean, what are the overall thoughts? This is the first time on air that we've talked, at least with this group, that we've talked about anything relating to politics. But the first thing people said is, sports radio, sports journalists, stick to sports. That mold's kind of broken now as the president decided to rant about not rant, but tweet a lot about the NFL. He tweeted about the NBA. All the NBA media days happened, and coaches and players were criticizing him. He tweeted about NASCAR. He had a little shout out to the Penguins who are going to come to the White House. Jake, what are your overall thoughts on this whole thing?
I mean, everyone has a platform in some way, and however way you see fit to use it, use it. I mean, I'm not someone to tell anyone else how to use, the platform that they have. I mean, if they think it's important, if they think what they're doing, helps some kind of cause or someone in society, then go for it. I mean, if you really think you're doing well and it's not hurting anyone, I don't see why not.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I definitely think that there's some instances, like I read what Tyler Eifert, he wrote a big piece too, saying, hey, look, like at least for me personally, standing for the anthem and kind of having my hand over my chest, like over here, it just means so much to him. And I somewhat agree with that. I understand where people are coming from when they make these protests, and it's their right to do it. I think it's simple as that. They have the right to do it. If they want to do it, do it.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think both sides have the positive argument, and both sides also have negative reaction to it. I think on the side of you are a bad person if you're not standing for the anthem and you should be fired for the job, I think that's a little bit harsh. They have technically, it's not like people have, Tommy will know this because we take a media law class together, but people don't have a First Amendment right. It is the government's right whether or not they can punish you for any sort of free speech. In this case, this is a peaceful protest. It's not like they're burning a flag. It's not like they're spitting on it or anything like that. It's just a kneel down. It's just something like that. But on the other side of it, the people who are really just taking this as a way or an excuse to just bash the president, I think that's a little bit too strong for the most part. Because I did see one tweet. This is from Chrissy Teigen, who's a model, the wife of John Legend. She was saying how all the people who are against not standing, or who are saying people should be fired if they don't stand for the anthem, I expect to see you standing in your homes for the anthem. Like, I don't think that's just a very educated thing to say. You have to find a decent argument for it. But that leads me to a real question that I was just wondering. This just makes me think. why is the national anthem such a staple at sporting events? Like even at other sports. With the United States, it's different though, because in the NFL, most of the players are American. But in soccer, in the Premier League, for example, they don't play an anthem. Or in a Champions League game, because there's people from all over the world, they don't play an anthem. They play a song that's like a theme song for the tournament. But the only time that I've really seen the national anthem as kind of a way to pump up the crowd or show real nationalism is at a national sporting event like a World Cup or an Olympics.
I mean, if you're looking for like a specific reason, I don't think you're going to find one. I think it's just more of like a thing. I think it's just a thing to do. And I think recently, like with leagues like the MLB, NFL, NBA, what so have you, I think they've all been kind of involving the military more and kind of like their pre-game ceremonies, things like that. So I don't think there's a specific reason, but I mean, it's just kind of like been nice. And, you know, I mean, for as long as we've been alive, we've all seen it. So, I mean, I think it's just something that's kind of in your brain.
I feel like going with that too, it's almost just like sports are so much of American culture, and these athletes are who are representing us out there. These are who really are outside of guys like Donald Trump and the president and big political figures. They're really who kind of the outsiders see as America. And I don't know, I mean, like I've been to like the Olympics before and like something like that. Like when I was out there, like to see.
You were at the Olympics?
Yeah, I was in Beijing for the Olympics in 08. Yeah, no. But anyway, we can talk about that more later. But yeah, no. But I mean, I don't know. Just for me, like to go out there and see like USA play and like when they win that gold medal, like when I saw Phelps win some of his medals, when he was out there, I mean, guys were tearing up singing, like representing, because that's their country. And I think that it kind of just means so much to so many of those athletes to be able to go out there, represent, and just play in front of not even just Americans, but kind of the whole world.
Yeah, I think the bottom line overall is that the first thing you think of an action to show patriotism or nationalism is to stand for a national anthem or to do a Pledge of Allegiance. It's not the only way. People express their views in different forms. Some people like to be yelling and shouting about their opinion. Some people like to stay quiet about it. Some people just don't want to talk about it at all. But there's other ways to show nationalism, and sports and politics are always going to be intertwined. Sports is a representation of a nation's culture. When people think of the United States, they don't just think about the food. Food is one of the big things. Music is another one. And then sports is the third. Those are the three things. The political figures too. But I guarantee you most people internationally around the world probably don't even know who the vice president is. People in the United States don't even know who the vice president is. And that's fine. But when it comes to sports, athletes have different ways of showing their patriotism. Most of these guys who are kneeling at the football games, they don't hate it's not like they hate the United States. They shouldn't get fired for their jobs. They've donated for the you know, they have funds, they have donations, all kinds of good stuff.
Well, I think why we saw it so en masse this past weekend was because of the comments, and I think it was more just not that they were against any specific thing, but I think it was just more of a unity thing. Like all the players, teammates, coaches stand together against, I mean, spiteful, hateful comments about their league and about their teammates, you know. So I think it was just more of a, you know, we all are in this together. I mean, you even saw owners on the sidelines, I mean, with their players and coaches. So, I mean, it's just more of like a we all stand together thing.
One perspective I'm curious about is from Jade. You've sung national anthems at sporting events here at U of I. You've sung the Star Spangled Banner. You've sung O Canada. When someone asks you to do that, what does that personally mean for you?
Well, honestly, like not being American, I don't know. I don't really like feel, I guess, what a connection like most of you would. And after all these protests have been happening, I've started to like rethink if I should be singing it, I guess. But I don't think we should be judging these players for kneeling during the anthem. And when they do it, it's no like disrespect towards the country. It's the people who run this country, and to them, I guess they're letting them down. And this is their way of reaching out. And a lot of people don't have that voice, so these pro athletes have that voice, and they're speaking up for people who can't. And this is their way of doing it.
Yeah, definitely an interesting perspective. I just think that the national anthem should be sung and should be played at sporting events. we're a very unique country in general. Besides all the freedoms that are exercised in the United States, and our sports are very unique. You know, football, all of our main sports are invented in the United States. Football, basketball, and baseball. We don't really have soccer is getting bigger in this country, you know, but sports like rugby and cricket, which are big all over the world, aren't really played in the United States. Hockey is probably the biggest sport that wasn't invented in the U.S. But there's so many ways, other than kneeling to the national anthem, there's so many more disrespectful ways to show anti-patriotism towards the United States, and I don't think these players should be fired for it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this. But for the most part, obviously the actions of yesterday, when Kaepernick did it, it was because of the injustices he believed happened in the United States. Whereas yesterday was about more so, we were not a fan of President Trump's comments. We wanted to show that we are a united league. For an NFL perspective, moving away from the politics, I think this is really good for the NFL. Because previously we've seen a lot of NFL players and NFL owners really not be happy with Roger Goodell, and this has kind of been a uniting thing for them. And even some of the NFL owners, one in particular, Robert Kraft, who supported Donald Trump in the election, was very upset with what he said. The whole league is together, even the whole NBA. Donald Trump got Cavs and Warriors Twitter agreeing with each other, which is, I saw one thing, and that was kind of funny.
Yeah, even the MLB is coming to this, which is usually a very passive league, and they really don't do much. I mean, even you have, so far it's a player, Bruce Maxwell on the A's, who's kneeling, but I'm sure that's going to spread because I think if players see a rookie doing this, then I think that's going to spread. But also, you know, there are people who are pretending to be mad about the NFL, like being unified against what Trump said. Don't kid yourselves. People are saying boycott the NFL. I'm not watching the NFL anymore. You're all liars. You're all dirty liars. I mean, none of you are not watching the NFL on Sunday. None of you are not getting up to check your fantasy teams. None of you are not placing bets. You're all watching the NFL. It's the biggest sport in America. I mean, it's got fans worldwide too. I mean, you're all liars. Don't say you're going to boycott the NFL and then we all know on Sunday afternoon you're right there on your couch watching.
That's what I wish I was doing. Every Sunday so far, it's never been able to watch football. It's just the life of a college student, just not being able to go and get that NFL Red Zone stream to watch all those. And to be fair, this is probably going to be the most memorable NFL Sunday in my lifetime because of the kneeling, because of the controversy, and also there were a lot of great endings from a lot of great games, which we have not seen in the National Football League for quite some time. Last year, most of the games were a snore. The first 2 weeks, we had a lot of snore games. This past week, we had a lot of excitement with the Bears' overtime win, Eagles winning on a 61-yard field goal by Jake Elliott. The Lions almost won, but didn't. A lot of good football. Very, very big stories happening. And now, that's it. Once the president decides to tweet about sports, then now everyone's going to be talking about it. And that's kind of how it has been in the United States since President Trump has been elected. But we're going to take another break here. When we come back, we're going to move on back to mainly sports as we go to our final thoughts, plus a score update from Jade when we return to Illini Drive on WPGU 1071.
You're watching Illini Drive on Urbana Public Television. Tune in Monday nights at 6 p.m. to listen live on WPGU 1071.
Welcome back to Illini Drive. Here is your score update. In baseball, the Chicago Cubs defeated the Milwaukee Brewers 5-0. They play the Cardinals tomorrow at 7. Chicago White Sox defeated the Kansas City Royals 8-1, and they play the LA Angels tonight at 7 p.m. In hockey, the Chicago Blackhawks trail the Boston Bruins 3-1.
Thank you, Jade. We're going to move on now to our final thoughts, and to start us off, we're going to go back to Jade, who wanted to talk a little bit about this brand new tennis competition that made its debut this past weekend.
Yes, we got the Laver Cup. Took place on September 22nd to the 24th. It's funny, my coach was actually talking about it today, and he wants to take the whole team there next year as our fall retreat. But it was really exciting. There was a lot of young players. We had Team World, which is everyone other than Europe, against Team Europe. We had Denis Shapovalov against Zverev. And we had Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer playing doubles together. So they were the big headline for the tournament, and it was really exciting. And I don't know, we're all really hyped about it. So
yeah, it's going to be in Chicago next year. So Would you expect to see Federer and Nadal playing again next year, maybe even with Djokovic and Murray?
I hope so. That would be a lot of fun. It's almost like an exhibition match, but more exciting, I feel. Yeah, that'd be really awesome to see them playing together. Yeah.
Now, I guess if the women did this kind of style, because this is sort of like a Ryder Cup for tennis, Europe against the rest of the world, whereas in the Ryder Cup, it's Europe against the USA. If the women did this, though, Team World would probably beat Europe. It would be a lot closer, though.
I totally agree. Like, there's a lot more Americans on the women's side that could be competitive. I mean, even on the men's side, we have a few good world players. We got Milos Raonic, Del Potro, and Nishikori. But no, on the women's side, I feel like Team World would have a way better chance.
Well, for all you living in Illinois, make sure maybe snag some tickets to the Laver Cup. 362 days away, something like that. It's going to be over at the United Center. United Center is going to have tennis. Interesting. Let's move over now to Jake, who has a somber final thought, but also one that is very, very interesting that pertains not to tennis, pertains to golf. So, rearrange this. There we go.
All right, so I'm going to start with the golf thought. Justin Thomas won the FedEx Cup this past weekend, won a tournament that officially made him the FedEx Cup winner for the golf year. His career earnings up to this year, before this golf year, were $15 million. He made $22 million in this year alone. He just really came out of. He was always good, but he really played out of his mind this year. He played incredibly well at the Masters, all the majors, and a picture came out after his win on Sunday of him with notes in his phones with a checklist of what he wanted to do. He wanted to average under 70. He wanted to shoot certain scores. He wanted to be in the top 10 in all of the majors. And he checked off nearly every one of his goals, which was really cool. He's also part of that group that hangs out with Jordan Spieth and Ricky Fowler. So, I mean, all those guys are on the come up, which is really awesome to see, and then see them hang out too. So it's just really a good time for golf. As a golfer myself, it's really exciting to see these younger guys come up and usher in the post-Tiger era. When we thought Rory was kind of that guy, but he never really turned it out. I mean, he had a couple good years, but I think this is really the era of all the young guys really coming into their own. And then, as Orri mentioned, I have a little bit more of a somber final thought. Today is the 1-year anniversary of Jose Fernandez's tragic death in a boating accident. I mean, he was just phenomenal to me as a baseball fan to watch. I would watch all the Marlins games that he pitched in. Always had an ERA in each of his 4 years under 3. I mean, he was on a Hall of Fame path. I mean, he was exceptional. I mean, he just loved baseball and he loved life. I mean, after he passed, he was my lock screen for 6 months probably. A picture of him watching the fireworks at Dodger Stadium, and it just makes me really sad. And just to be robbed of that kind of life and talent is just really unfortunate. And I mean, he loved life, he loved baseball, he loved interacting with the fans. And, you just hate to see it. And even Giancarlo Stanton posted a Instagram picture today just saying, like, I'm waiting for this nightmare to be over. And even all the events that took place the day after when they postponed the game, D. Gordon hitting his home run to lead off the game, they all wore the Fernandez jerseys. So, just something to think about for your Monday evening. Just go look at some of his highlights. I mean, it's awesome to just remember and just watch those. I mean, I have that GIF of him celebrating a Giancarlo Stanton home run, like going nuts in the dugout. I have it saved on my computer, and I just open it at least once a day and just watch it.
Yeah, I still remember the first game after Fernandez passed away when D. Gordon hit that home run. That might have been, even when the Yankees won the World Series, I didn't tear up, but I teared up after seeing D. Gordon hit that home run because you just saw the emotion. It's just one of those things where you can see that sports just means so much to a lot of people. It means so much to us. It's more than a game. It can bring people together. It can distract you from tragic things like that. But one question that I had pertaining to the golf was recently, probably post Rory McIlroy winning around 2 majors every year for that 3-year period, is Justin Thomas or Jordan Spieth the guy that we're finally gonna see someone maybe win 2 or 3 majors every year like the way Tiger did? Because recently it's just been a different guy every single major.
I think it's going to be Spieth a couple of years. I don't think it's going to be every single year, year in, year out, but I think Spieth is the most likely to do it every time. And also, you can't rule out Dustin Johnson. I think it's going to be him and Spieth battling for that top spot. I mean, Dustin's a couple years older, but I mean, he's still in his prime. He can still rip it. I mean, in the tournament a couple weeks ago, I mean, Spieth hit his drive. He did a safe drive just to try and par out, and Dustin Johnson went straight across the lake. It was a risky move, and it was a go for it move. But Dustin Johnson just teed up, calm as ever, just went right across the lake, put it next to the green, and sealed the win. It was one of the gutsiest moves I've ever seen in my life as a golf watcher, and it's really cool to see. I mean, those two are definitely the juggernauts of the golf world right now.
Next big golf tournament that will be coming up is the President's Cup that will be taking place this upcoming weekend, actually. This weekend. Yeah, it's this weekend. The last one that was in the United States was actually 10 minutes away from my house at the Murrayfield Golf Course over in Dublin, Ohio. That's where the Memorial is every year. Almost got tickets, but I went to the Memorial last summer, so that course is beautiful. But it's not going to be there this upcoming year. This year, the President's Cup is going to be in Jersey City at the Liberty National Golf Club. So the United States have home course advantage. But let's move on now. We're going to talk basketball for the rest of this final thoughts. We're going to move first to Will, who wants to talk about his Chicago Bulls and the big move that they made. D. Wade is no longer a Bull. It only took him 1 year to leave.
It's not often I approve of the decisions made by the Bulls front office, but I am a big fan of the move to allow D. Wade to buy out his contract. I know they negotiated, so I think that Wade might be eating around $8 million of that contract. But it just makes sense for both sides. I think the Bulls have committed to a rebuild, obviously, with the departure of Jimmy Butler. It seems like they're not going to win many games this next year, which, I mean, that's kind of the formula for success in the NBA right now. We saw it with the 76ers, who are really going to like have a competitive team this year. And what I'm really looking forward to is seeing where D. Wade will end up, because among his list of potential destinations, he could reunite with some old friends in terms of the Banana Boat crew. You have obviously LeBron out in Cleveland, and I think for him to go to Cleveland, if they were to somehow make it to a championship, that does kind of cement their legacy together and what they did in Miami as a duo, in terms of maybe comparisons to be made between, LeBron and Pippen. I know that's a stretch in a lot of ways, but rings matter, Tommy. I know you're over there shaking your head, and you have time for your rebuttal. And then likewise, with Melo going to OKC, I think that's also a strong possibility. I know there's connections there, especially with Paul George, and that would be a real competitive team with D. Wade, another veteran presence out there on the floor.
I honestly think the only two options for D. Wade are the Cavs and the Spurs, because I think Wade wants to play for a team that's going to compete for a title. Miami's not going to compete for a title this year, and I don't know how OKC would sign him. They don't have the cap space. They have 2.3 mil. They're going to sign Wade. He's not going to want 2.3 million.
I mean, none of those teams have more than like $4 million to offer him.
Plus, he's still getting 15 from Chicago.
Yeah, he does get the 15 from Chicago. That's right. I think he's going to go to Cleveland. That's not my heart. That's my head. Him and LeBron are just buddies. He wants that fourth ring.
You know where I want him?
Where do you want him?
I want him in Golden State.
Oh, you want Wade? Tom wants Wade on the Warriors.
Talk about not having money to
Oh God. Yeah, play with Hasan, play with James Johnson, Tyler Johnson. No, I think he'll go to the Cavs, but more so, no Wade, no Butler, no Rondo on Chicago anymore. How many games are the Bulls winning realistically?
Campaign's leading them to a heavy 60.
I'm not sure, but they are going to be in the bottom of the NBA. So I would say somewhere between 30 and 40 wins, maybe.
30 and 40.
If
I saw the over/under set at 20 and a half.
20. Oh, the over/under set at 20 and a half. Well, then in that case, maybe less than 20 games. I mean, I'm not really sold on Zach LaVine at all.
I'm capping it at 25.
25 over there from Jake. All right. Well, if there's anyone out there listening, make sure to let us know your thoughts here. Bulls over/under 20.5 games.
Yeah, we're getting very close to NBA season. And now the final thought of Tommy and I goes from Chicago to Oklahoma City. The Melo deal. This just shocked me. And this was all happening while Trump was tweeting about the NFL. This was kind of a way to distract everyone. Carmelo Anthony going to the Oklahoma City Thunder, joining Paul George and Russell Westbrook. My first reaction was, wow. Shout out to Oklahoma City for not just sulking about losing Durant. They went out there. They turned Victor Oladipo, Nick Sabonis, Doug McDermott, Enes Kanter, and a draft pick into Paul George and Carmelo Anthony, a second-round pick. So, Tommy, are the Thunder now, do they have a chance to beat the Warriors, and are they the definitive second-best team in the West?
I think it's tough to say that right now, considering we haven't seen them play together, and it's gonna be really interesting to see where Melo fits in that team. It's Russell's team. Melo's pretty old. He's gonna ball. He's gonna get his 20 a game, but like when it comes to the last shot, it's gotta be Russell, right?
George might take the last shot a couple times. Well, no, but here's why I don't say Russell Westbrook. I mean, it really is going to depend on the game. Melo can be clutch, and we've seen Carmelo Anthony. He succeeds when he plays with good players. On Syracuse, he had a lot of good players around him. Won on Team USA in the Olympics. This guy, Carmelo. Yeah, Melo won 3 gold medals, and he was just raining threes against Nigeria and these other teams in the Olympics. When he has good players around him, he plays really well. But also, why I don't think Russell Westbrook would take the last shot most of the time, he'll have his 6 for 25 games a lot. Paul George shoots a much higher percentage than Russell Westbrook. But now Russell Westbrook doesn't have to take as many shots. But I personally think in the starting 5, Westbrook will be at the point. I think they're going to start George at either the 2 or the 4. Melo has to stay at small forward. I don't think Melo can pull off playing power forward or shooting guard because Paul George can at least defend 3 or 4 positions.
Well, the thing is, those 3 are locks. Steven Adams. Who's their 5th guy? Patrick Patterson? Oh, okay. All right.
Goes to the power forward. They put Paul
Yeah, no, that works. I like that. That's a really big lineup, and they could cause some problems for Golden State, actually.
Yeah, if they're playing.
If they play that big, yeah, that's a huge starting lineup because Patrick Patterson's what, 6'11", Melo's 6'7", 6'8". That's a big squad. I think they could be really good, actually.
I mean, the Thunder were the 6th best team in the West last year, with just Russell, right? Which I'm saying, but I still think they're only the 4th best team. I think they're behind Golden State, San Antonio, and Houston. I still think Houston's better.
San Antonio?
I don't think San Antonio's better.
I disagree.
Based on what? Based on what?
Age. Based on age.
Since when has age ever affected San Antonio?
Okay, but here's the difference this time. San Antonio, the entire Western Conference, every competing team in the West has at least 2 or 3 all-star caliber players. San Antonio has 1 now in Kawhi. That's it. Golden State has 4 all-stars. OKC 3. Houston's got 2. Minnesota has 3 all-star caliber players. LA even has 2. The Clippers, and they lost Chris Paul, and everyone thinks they might still make the playoffs. Utah even has a couple all-star caliber players, and they lost Gordon Hayward. I don't think San Antonio is going to have that great of a season. I could be wrong. I do still think they make the playoffs and probably get a top 4 seed because Greg Popovich might be the greatest coach in NBA history. Kawhi Leonard is their only all-star caliber player, unless Brandon Paul, former Illini, just goes off and has 30 a game every single time, which would be awesome to see.
But I mean, it's just like you said, Popovich is arguably the greatest coach in NBA history, at least one of them, and he just always gets the best. I mean, he's getting the best out of LaMarcus Aldridge and Pau Gasol. Like, no other coach would be able to do that. No other coach would be able to get the level of efficiency out of those two that he is. They have Rudy Gay. They have Brandon Paul. They still have, I mean, Tony Parker's still decent. He can still pass the ball. Ginobili can still shoot lights out. I mean, they just have, I mean, you're right. They only have 1 all-star player, be that an MVP candidate, and then they have a lot of good players that I think play really well and complement each other really well. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it that the Spurs aren't still the 2nd or 3rd best team in the West.
And I still wouldn't be surprised if we see even more off-season moves in the NBA because the NBA off-season has been the best season in 2017 so far, better than the NBA, NFL, MLB, and NHL playoffs regular season. I mean, this NBA off-season has been great, and everyone cannot wait for the start of the season. It's only about 3 weeks away because middle of October, starting earlier. So, yeah, Melo on the Thunder. Wade's out of Chicago. We'll see where he ends up. But that's it for Illini Drive here on WPGU 107.1. This has been brought to you by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and info, fightingillini.com or 1-866-Illini-1. For Jake Hasan, Tommy Polcyn, Jade Hilton, and Will Gerard, I'm Orri Benatar. Thank you for listening. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for another edition of Illini Drive at 6 p.m. right here on WPGU 107.1.